Well, good evening, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. My gosh, we have such a great show tonight because we have such a great dude here in the studio tonight. My good friend, Mark Machek, is here with us tonight. You guys know Mark as Cryptidville. Most of you. He's in our chats a lot. He's also been my co-host several times here on the channel and my guest as well. And wow, y'all, he lives up at the Land Between the Lakes up in Kentucky, and he has had several cryptid encounters. He's had a bunch. He's had a lot of experience throughout his life with cryptids, and tonight we're going to get into some of those, and I can't wait. Mark is a good friend, and I really enjoy having him here. He is one of the OGs of the Bigfoot and Dogman communities, y'all. Okay, so y'all get ready. We're gonna have a really good show tonight, and I am actually just getting in from the field myself. I was out doing a little Bigfooting today, and so I rushed on back home tonight, and I do have a video. I did put a little video out, a promo for the show tonight, live and direct from the woods today. So if you guys follow me on social media, you guys might have seen that. It was beautiful today here in Georgia. It was beautiful. We got storms coming through tomorrow, so I had to get out there. And yes, I'm like a human tornado. If ever I do anything like going out to the woods before a show, I'm usually rushed like heck. But hey, I'm here. I'm feeling good, and I'm super glad you guys are here. So if you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows and everything, like if you guys want to go to my archives or follow me on social media, go over to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my shows and everything over there. And also, if you guys would like to support my work, I do have a Patreon, and I have a shop. It's on Etsy. It's called War Woman Goods. I usually have that on sale just for y'all, and y'all alone. So thank you guys for all your support. It means the world to me. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. And thank you for spending your Saturday night here with the Cryptid Huntress. All right. Well, let's get to our show tonight because we have Mark here. There's no telling where this conversation is going tonight, but I can promise you it might ruffle some feathers and it might just leave you scratching your head. Okay. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. So, you know, Mark is my friend that came on the show and talked about the Dogman in the LBL that had face paint. It basically had paint smeared down his face. Okay, so we may get into that a little bit today. But after a series of odd paranormal events, Mark Machek became interested in the paranormal, cryptids, and UFOs. Because of the things that he experienced, he embarked on a journey to understand the mysteries of the world. And thank goodness he did, because he is here with us tonight. You guys, please help me welcome to the show, Mark Machek, a.k.a. Cryptidville. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having me on.
Well, of course. Thank you for being here. I've been waiting for you to come back on the show. Okay.
When this one's over, you might be saying, "Oh,
what was I thinking? Yeah. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're in the chat all the time, and you're just. It's always makes me feel good to see you here and in the chat, and so I was just waiting. I didn't want to push you. Okay, I didn't want to push you to come on the show, but I knew when the time was right, you would be here. And so here you are. And I was telling the audience that you live right up there at the Land Between the Lakes up in Kentucky. And that's one of your research spots, right?
Yeah. I've actually, I've lived in this area for, in the neighborhood of 27 years. I decided to stay in this area after I got out of the military,
Hmm.
and it has been rather interesting. Is probably the best way to put it.
Interesting. Yes. Well, the LBL has almost a stigma to it as being, coming from a boots on the ground field researcher and investigator. When you hear the LBL, you think of Dogman massacres and people getting shredded to pieces by Dogman and stuff. And and I think that there's a lot of substance to that, right? But when I first started going public with my research, I didn't even really know about the Dogman stuff too much until I started bringing people on my shows that talked about it and that had encountered Dogmen. But what I did know about Dogman was the LBL. Okay, the LBL, that is like the pinnacle of Dogman field research right there, and encounters. It got such a stigma, but now it feels like everybody goes there and stuff. And I'm not saying it's any less scary. Okay, but how do you feel about that? Because I know I've got David Pardue is a good friend of mine that comes on my show. His one main research area was Uwharrie National Forest up in North Carolina. It was teeming with Bigfoots, okay, for the longest time, and that was his spot. And then a TV show came out there, and now it's
Yeah.
just it lost the mystique on it. It didn't lose the mystique for him, but it dampened it. Okay, is that how you feel about the LBL right now, or what? Tell me your thoughts on
Well, actually, the way that I feel about it is, I had a pretty good thing going as far as a real good research area, and I understand it's public land. You can't really say to anybody, "Oh, well, you can't come to this area," and all that good stuff, and I get that, but all of the hype that has been put out by certain people who will remain nameless, it kind of gives it the it's like, you know, I mean, they give it this, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say that it's not dangerous. I'm not going to say that there's not anything going on over there, that there's not Bigfoot, Dogman, other things in that area, but I I think it's safe to say that it's not to the magnitude that some people make it out to be.
it? Hmm.
And, you know, as an example, you know, I'm not going to call names, but there's one podcaster in particular that every video there for a while that they were putting out, it was, LBL so and so got killed, or kill team, or this, that, and the other. And, my response to that is, you know, these people these people that are putting these videos out, a lot of them have never even been to the LBL. So they're just saying things or relating information that's given to them by somebody else that may or may not be true. And it just makes it kind of hard for um, the legit people that are trying to do real research, because it just does, because it draws that negative attention to the area when it might not necessarily need to be put in that perspective towards people that are in the public, so to speak.
Well, like I said, that's the spot for Dogman research, and I've been doing Bigfoot research since 2011, and Dogman gets sprinkled in there a little bit with these investigations that I do. Um, it is what it is, okay. But my main thing was Bigfoot field research, and I gotta admit, it's like we know Bigfoots are out there. My next thing was like I really do want to see a Dogman, okay, and the best place to go, according to if you watch YouTube, is the LBL. Okay, I might have a trip kind of loosely planned up there at some point, and I'd like a good tour guide if you're available. Okay, at some point. But anyways, it does have that stigma to it as being, you know, a place of evil actually. And what do you think about that? Because to you, that, I mean, you call that area home, not the LBL's your home, but outside of it, um, it's got a very evil stigma to it. What do you agree with that or no?
Well, a couple comments on that. So the first thing that I want to mention is, you have people that want to come there and they want to research and they want to look around, and that's all fine and dandy. They go in there and they do their experiments and they do their calls and wood knocks and what have you. And when their 3 days to a week is up, they go home. And you know, I'm mentioning that because of the fact that, and I know we had the discussion at one point where we talked about conjuring cryptids, you know, and I think it's important for people to understand that there are people out there that are willing to do anything to have an interaction with one of these entities, whatever they are. And that can include things that are not on the level of just going out there and doing a vocalization or a call or tree knocks. It gets into the realm of the supernatural spiritual realm, and some of it could be benign or non-malevolent, and some of it can be downright negative, in nature. And when they come and do those things and leave, then what happens when they leave after doing that stuff? It leaves the people that live in this area to deal with whatever they have done. Because I know we're all familiar with the concept of portals. If you go into an area, you open up a portal, however you do it, you leave that portal open, you know, and you just go on your way, or you get scared and you leave. you know, who's policing that portal if that portal's not closed? And that leaves there is a consequence that's put upon the people that live and frequent that area to deal with at some point. And it's rather concerning to me, from that perspective.
Mhm. I 100% back you up on that. I do, and we are very familiar with portals here on this channel for sure. And I do believe that I've talked so much about portals that everybody who watches my shows, the regulars here, we know that there is absolutely a possibility to open portals. And we explore a lot about like where these cryptids come from. Okay, where are they coming from? Could they be interdimensional? And there are some thrill seekers out there. And I am not going to say that I have never done anything crazy. I've done a lot of crazy stuff. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I've done a lot of crazy stuff in my lifetime. Okay. But purposely trying to open a portal to bring a Dogman in is not one of them. Okay. It's not one of them. However, my team has documented an actual portal. We do believe, I mean, maybe that's where some of these critters and people probably too are coming in and out of. But you just never know. Really, I'm not saying not everybody doesn't know what they're doing. Okay. But there are thrill seekers I've been bait. I admit it. I raise my hand. I have been Bigfoot bait. I volunteered to be Bigfoot bait. But it was not to anyone's detriment but my own. Okay. It was me. If anything happened to anybody, it was going to be me, and I was going to be taken off by a Bigfoot. And hopefully my mom would, they'd see what happened and they'd tell my mom. Okay. And that's that. Okay. But when people go out, if they get a little bit of information about something and they're like, okay, well, let's take this grimoire here or something. Okay. No shade to people who practice witchcraft and stuff. It is what it is. I'm just saying. Okay. But take like a spell book or something, or read something online, and they're like, okay, well, and there's actual cults probably, I would assume, that go out to places like the LBL. That's a place of power. It's in between two bodies of water. And, if they hear that dogmen are out there or werewolves, maybe they're doing rituals and stuff potentially. I don't know. But they go out there and they do spells and rituals, and I'm not saying sacrifices and things like that. I have no idea. I don't know what goes. I've never been there before. Okay, but let's say that somebody did get a little spicy out there, decide to do something like that, and it opens up something bad. Okay, or opens up a portal and something bad comes through it. That scares me to death thinking about that. Actually, as a researcher like yourself, you live out there. As a researcher, I always advise people not to even gift cryptids, okay, because of the aftermath of what it could do to the families that have children, because there are children that go out there, right? And before you answer that, Jojo, thank you for that super sticker. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. But children go out there quite often, right, Mark?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the craziest things that I saw or have seen in the time that I've lived in this area, I was on the Trace, which is the main road that goes through the land between the lakes. And by the way, I just want to mention, I know it's the weekend, and I know there may be people that are interested in coming to the LBL this weekend, but I just want to let you know, before you consider doing that, this weekend in particular, they are actually trying to shut down the land between the lakes so that people don't get in there and put themselves into a dangerous situation because of the flooding that's actually going on in this area right now. Um, and just wanted to mention that. So
I just want to say there was flooding where I went today too. It was weird. We never have flooding out there. And things were flooded. There had been a control burn too, obviously, but there was a lot of flooding today out there. And this is in Georgia, so I'm quite a bit away from you. But anyways, that's good advice, though.
oh yeah.
Right? You have been warned, people.
So it just so happened one weekend I was coming down the Trace from the very north tip of the LBL, and there's this particular place where there's a walking trail that runs alongside the road for a little bit, and there was a young girl sitting on the trail. It's a 2 or 3 foot wide paved trail or path, and she was sitting there, had headphones on, and I'm driving by, and I'm like, it's just dumbfounding how oblivious to her environment she was.
Oh, that's never good. That's never good. Earbuds? No, y'all don't wear earbuds. Even when you're walking through town, right, Mark? It's like, be aware of your surroundings, y'all.
Always try to be aware of your surroundings, irregardless of where you're at, because we got some cray people out there, and
Yeah, we do.
and you know you got to look out for yourself, because at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of people that, even if somebody were to try to attack you or whatever, kidnap you or whatever, I don't know how many times I've seen videos where people just stand by and watch and don't try to intercede because they don't want to be involved.
There's actually something there that's labeled. It's got a label. I forgot what they call that. It's like bystander syndrome or something like that. And I was just watching that this week, and it's like where people are being, beaten to death and stuff, and hurt, and they're begging people for help, and people just stand there and watch and pull their phones out and video it. It's
crazy.
Like, what? That's not me. Okay, to me, that would be like NPCs. If you know what an NPC is.
Oh, yeah.
That's like NPC behavior. I'm sorry, if I see a kid get something happen to anybody, I'm jumping in. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, and I don't care what it's. The consequences don't matter at that point because I will react if I have to. That's just the way I am. But not everybody's like that, Mark. It's weird.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. And I think the more remote you put yourself, like in a place like the LBL, and you encounter something like that, your response to an event is going to be less likely because of just being in the area that you're in. Not even mention the fact that you're probably dealing with a cryptid. I mean, who in their right mind wants to go out that way? At the hands of a cryptid.
I mean, okay, I got to be honest. Being a researcher and going out there, I've come to terms with the fact that I'm putting myself in really bad predicaments, and it could happen. And it could happen. I don't want it to happen. It will not happen. But I wouldn't do it if I didn't already know that it could happen. I'm just saying. But the
Well, that's
normal
like,
person,
yeah,
no. Yeah.
yeah. That's like myself. For the longest time, for the first, I don't know, 10, 15 years that I was researching in the LBL, the majority of the time, even though I was involved with a loosely, I'm not going to say loosely knit, but a group of people that would come to the LBL like maybe once or twice a year, the majority of the time I would research over there by myself because I couldn't find anybody that was willing to go. And it's actually bizarre because you hear people, when they find out you're interested in the subject, they're like, "Oh, that's cool. I'd like to go over there and check it out. Go over there with you." And then when it comes time to put the rubber to the road, they're not. There are no shows, or they're just, "Oh, I can't do it," or whatever. They back out. I don't know how many people I've had tell me, "Oh, well, Bigfoot's not real," and then if it is, let's go see one. And then when it comes time to go see one, they're just, no, I can't do that.
I know. Well, that's when reality hits. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, if these things are real, I wanted to know, but but do I? Probably not. They're not, they ain't like us. That what that song is. They're not like us. They're
You were
not like
talking about that
us.
on your
They're
last
not like
show,
us.
and I was the other day I was driving somewhere at work, and that song came on the radio, and I thought of that instantly, and I was like, that's kind of a very annoying song.
It's horrible. It's programming too. Every time you turn, when I got stuck with my Wi-Fi not hooking up to my truck on the way home from that Bigfoot conference, I kept hearing that song over and over again, and I couldn't believe how much they played that song. It was so bad. It was
It's
so
crazy.
bad. I know, but anyways, yeah, it's programming. But yeah, not everybody's like us, Mark.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of I'm a big music buff, and a lot of times I'll talk about songs or movie clips or whatever to get a point across. And uh, a lot of people don't get that. They just think, oh, he's just playing this music or that music or whatever because it's a good song or it's an oldie or whatever. But usually there's a reason behind it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, you go out there. You're not always with a team of people out there. Like you go out whenever, I guess, whenever you just get an itch to go out there, right? Is that how you kind of go out to the LBL sometimes? And you've had
yeah,
several encounters, a couple with Dogman, right?
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Um, you know, Here where I'm at, I can get in my truck and I can be downtown Golden Pond in about 10 minutes. That's how close I am to it.
That's real close. That's real close. So people are opening up portals over there and things are crawling out of it. And if you've been Marked. Okay, that's what some people say. Some people say that like if you see a Bigfoot or you see a dogman, you get marked, and you're always gonna see them. I'm not saying you've been marked. Okay, I'm just saying theoretically speaking, and you live right there, so man, I can see why you got a little concerned about all that. I can
Oh
see
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, that's a excuse me. That's a factor that I've had to deal with in the real, because you hear all these people that talk about, oh well, these things will follow you home or this, that, and the other. And I made a comment the other night in your video, and I'll go ahead and talk about this. I said, if you block them out, they will invade your dreams. Remember that comment the other
I will
night?
never forget that comment. Oh my god, I'm so glad you brought that up
So
because I actually called you out. I was like, well, it sounds like you're speaking from experience. Tell us about tell us what were you talking
so
about?
so when after my very first Dogman sighting, the one with the the one that had the looked like paint on the side of its muzzle.
The face paint.
Yeah. After I had that encounter, I started digging real deep into the whole phenomenon, and I was looking at different things. And now, the and I'll get to that question here in just a minute. There,
Oh yeah, that's William.
now,
He's talking about the
William.
cemeteries. We will not forget. We're going to cover that one for sure. William, thank you.
So, um, I've always had a tendency when I go into an area, and I know that a lot of people may not understand this and may not get this due to um, lack of experience or full understanding. But you know, and I don't know how to explain how this works. But there was a time, and basically the way that it was, I could go into an area and without seeing anything or any obvious sign, no structures, no footprints, nothing. I could go into that area, and if there was a Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever in that area, I would know it. I
Your
don't know
intuition.
i- something intuition related or something along that nature. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how it works. All I know is that turned out to be the case. So, um, knowing that I was on that level, I had always heard this whole concept and this talk of, oh well, they can telepathically communicate with you and this, that, and the other. And so I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine told me a story about a guy in Maine who had a cabin out in the woods. And I'm going to condense this.
Okay.
Um, so basically, they were telepathically talking to this guy.
Hmm.
And it got to the point where at one point they were telling him that he needed to do a bunch of things that he was not able to do. And, basically telling him he needed to move to a certain location. And when he went against them, they started doing things that were, in the beginning, they were beneficial and, uh, helpful to the guy and looked out for him in different ways. And as soon as he went against what they were asking him to do, they started acting, in a negative fashion.
Oh wow.
So,
Sounds like people I know.
yeah. So because of that, I've always been of the mindset that I'm just not going to give them access to me like that. So, um,
So you shut it down? I mean,
yeah,
did you
yeah.
So you kind of shut your aura down, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying? Kind of
yeah,
shut the aura down. You just kind of keep to yourself, and you do not allow it. You put up a shield, a psychic shield is what we call
yeah.
that. Okay.
So when I was doing a lot of the digging into the whole Dogman phenomenon, there was information that I came in contact with that caused me to do that, to not want to allow that kind of contact. So basically, um, they decided that they wanted to contact me in my dreams one night.
You mean the Dogman?
Yes. So basically, the way that it happened was in this dream that I'm going to call a dream, which may not have been a dream.
I totally get that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I was between a big apartment building and a tree line that was pine trees. And there was a space, I would say maybe 50, 60 yards wide in between it. And there was a chain link fence in the ditch that the drainage just ran through there. And there was, of all things, a clothesline. And on this clothesline, there were white sheets pinned to this clothesline. And on those sheets, there were claw marks. Looked like something that just walked up
Oh,
and just.
sounds symbolic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I'm standing there looking at these claw marks, and I hear something coming up through the woods in the tree line. I never saw them, but they came up to the edge of the tree line, and I knew what they were. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice, and it says, "If you don't stop looking for us, we're going to get you."
Oh my. Uh-oh.
So I was like, okay. So I thought about it after the next day, and I literally took a 6 month break from any research
Oh my gosh.
because of that. And, you know, I've had, let's just say, I've had some interesting experiences that not a lot of people know about that surround that whole topic and surround some of the individuals that live in this area that kind of make me question, was I really was it really dogmen, or was it like werewolves, or what exactly was that? Because when you start looking at the whole dogman phenomenon, there's that gray area where, some people might say, um, was it a dogman or werewolf? I mean, and I can tell you because the two sightings that I had, there were two different types. The first one, the one with the face paint, was more like it was, if you looked at it, it was like a Bigfoot with a wolf head on it. Now
Wow.
the second one that I saw was straight up Van Helsing type werewolf, and huge and fast, and uh, it was just very different from the first one that I saw. So I think that, one of them may not have been a quote unquote dog man. It may have been a werewolf. So if it was a werewolf, I know Dennis Carroll talks about werewolves and them having that humanistic aspect, and all that, and the human logic, because at one time they were humans, and are humans up until they totally sell out to the dark side, or whatever, however you want to look
Let
at
the
that.
beast take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, let's just say there's some things that are kind of interesting about the whole subject, and I don't know. I'm just going to mention
Oh yeah.
this. I'm just going to mention this. You ever wonder why, like, when you look at all these movies, they come out, you know, like Underworld and all that. Why why would they have vampires against werewolves? Why would they put that into a movie other than just the action aspect of it? I mean,
Well, isn't there okay, I've never been to the LBL, but isn't there a vampire hotel there?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
th- there's well, first of all, they are I'm going to say mythological, even though I know they're not mythological, but mythological
no,
icons, right? Vampires and werewolves, they go hand in hand, kind of, because they both, you know, go for the blood. It's all about the blood, okay, and it's all very ritualistic as well. And going back to the Bill Schnoebelen Legacy Club video that I've seen, where he gives that lecture, where he says that he's a rabbi now, I think, but back then, and back in the day, I think it's probably I'm gonna say it's probably the 80s. That was the time. I just feel like that would have been a good time to be a vampire for some reason. I don't know why. But he said that back in the 1980, back in the day, he was part of the Brotherhood of Satan, and that he reached a high level. He's also been a high level Freemason as well. But when he hit that high level, he was given the opportunity to either become a vampire or a werewolf. Okay, and it kind of just goes hand in hand. That's what it is, and maybe it's got some satanic roots to it. And speaking of prayers, though, okay, let's call in a little protection right now, everybody, okay, because we're getting into a little darkness a little bit here when it comes to this stuff. And Larry Sharp, thank you so much for that super sticker. He said, "Happy Saturday, y'all," and prayers. Okay, we could use them right now, but yes, prayers, everybody. And there's like I said, there's just something. There's a dark stigma to the LBL, and in my opinion, after all the years that I've talked about, all the years, all 2 or 3 years that I've ever talked about the LBL, my opinion has actually kind of changed from it being a dog man that potentially attacked that family. And that's the main story that comes out of the LBL is like in the 1980s, a family was mauled to death by a dog man. I did a remote viewing session of that. I do believe that happened. I've done shows where I've had people in the chat saying, "Well, I don't believe that ever happened." And there's people that go there and they say that never happened. Well, I don't know. I think the story is, I don't know. I did a remote viewing case of it, like a session. I think it probably did happen. Okay.
well,
But the stories get skewed a little bit over the years, and there's so much misinformation, and we just don't know, right?
well, a lot of people don't know this, but there's only really when Jan Thompson was alive, there's only really three people that I know of that actually spent any time with Jan and tried to validate that story in some way and tried to uh, see what was the case with that story from her perspective, and that would be uh, Barton Nunnally. And as much as we may not like him, it what's the guy, the Snapple guy? You,
Snapple guy.
yeah, uh, what is his name?
Oh, the guy that was known to be accused of being a hoaxer or something?
Yeah, well,
Dyer?
he's just been no, not
No,
him.
I don't know. Somebody will know in the chat. Let me check the chat real quick. Let's see. I don't see any names. Somebody from the LBL that was a hoaxer?
No, this guy, he lives in California, I think,
Okay.
and he's actually was the first person to have a corporation that was geared towards researching Bigfoot. I think it was called Search for Bigfoot or Search for Bigfoot or something like that,
Yeah.
Searching for Bigfoot or something like that.
Okay.
I'll remember his name here. Tom Biscardi, that's his name.
Oh, okay. You said it, not me. I don't
Yeah.
know him. Okay.
So, and then myself and a couple of researchers that are now passed away and long gone. Um, they were interested in the story, and they decided they wanted to come down and help me try to validate it. And
Oh man, that's that's pretty big time. Like you have roots in like you know, like I said, you're one of the OGs of. First of all, you're one of the OGs of the LBL in my book. Okay, when it comes
well,
to Dogman research, I consider
I
you
don't,
that. You probably don't consider yourself that, but I do. Okay,
I don't do the research that I do to try to be somebody. I do it to understand what's actually really going on, and to learn what I can about. You know, when I first started, when I first have, uh, when I first had in when I had my first encounter, you know, I wanted to know what it was and why I encountered it and all that good stuff. So, and then it wasn't until later in life that I had my second encounter that really got me curious about, you know, the whole subject and told me that there was more to the story. And the only way that I was going to find out what that more to the story was to look into it. So that got me started on a journey to try to understand all this stuff. And you know, I'm not, you know, people tell me, "Oh, well, you should do a podcast and this, that, the other." I'm not a podcaster.
you
That's that's
should.
that's not my jam.
Well, that's why you can just come on my channel whenever you feel like it. Okay.
I'm now. You give me a subject, and you tell me you want to know everything about that subject. I can research, you know, and then on top of that, you know, because of my upbringing, you know, I was imbued the skill set to actually get out in the field and do field research. And I feel like I do it in a way that not a lot of people do because I mean if you listen to what people are saying on podcasts, and I understand that people may go on a podcast, they're not going to tell everything that they do and experience and what have you.
Never tell everything.
And I get that. But the things that they are saying, it leaves me to think that maybe they're overlooking things and maybe their research methodology is maybe not the best or it needs to be refined or their their objectivity is not in a place where because you know as well as I do, you know, you take somebody if you were to pick anybody out of this audience and you take them out into the woods and they know that they're going to look for Bigfoot, especially if they're inexperienced. You take them out there, every sound is going to be a Bigfoot.
Usually, yes, but I gotta admit, I've got two ladies at least in this chat right now that I took out Bigfooting about 2 weeks ago after the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. Shout out to you guys. Okay, I got Amy and Leanne, the two sisters, and I got Jamie. I don't know if Jamie's in the chat. I haven't seen her. The chat's moving really fast tonight. But Leanne and Amy are in here, and I met them at the conference. So I took them out. First of all, Amy had better equipment than we had. Okay, first of all, they're in a league of their own. Okay, when it comes to Bigfoot, yes. If I were to take like one of my friends that makes fun of me for being a Bigfooter out in the woods, they would not know. They wouldn't even. I don't even think they'd ever get out of the car. They wouldn't get out of the car. It would be too terrifying, and that's why we don't take people out in the field usually ever that don't have experience already, and they have to be heavily vetted to go out. And my whole team's trained in mind control. Okay, like we're trained in all sorts of mind control tactics just because of how terrifying it can be out there.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, it's not for the weak at all.
definitely. And
Yeah,
really and truly, when you get over into places like the LBL or the LBL, it you know, and I hear it all the time. People say, "Oh, well, I want to go over there. I want to see a Bigfoot, a dog man, or whatever." And just remember, it's all fun and games until it happens. And the important thing to remember about it is, irregardless irregardless of how many encounters you've had, you can never ever control how an encounter is going to happen. You can say, "Oh, well, I would like to see one at a distance and it go its way and me go my way." You can't. You have no control over that when it actually happens. It may be right up on you. And it may be pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to get ready. Yeah, be ready for anything out there. And yeah, I actually feel sorry for people who are out there just enjoying a camping trip with their family and being terrorized by something like that. Can you imagine the fear? I mean, that would. And I tell everybody, don't live in fear, okay? But if you got something screaming at you in your camp, you know, or you see a werewolf out there, and like I said, I think my perspective has shifted over the years of like thinking that was a dogman. There's like a bunch of dog, and I think there are a lot of probably dogmen out there, the LBL, but I think potentially would attack that family if that happened. If this is written, I think it is. I think it was more werewolves than dogmen, but that's just my opinion. After studying werewolves and dogman pretty extensively, okay, it just seems like that would be more werewolf behavior than dogman behavior.
Well, I can't. Like, I always revert back to the old adage that, I wasn't there. I don't really know what happened. So, you know, all we have is the descriptive information from the story, and then if you wanna look at uh, the whole Roger LBL story, you
I
have
was just pulling this up.
you
Yeah.
have that information, you know, and not to say that his story is true or isn't true, but it's information that goes along with the story. And we don't really know. Now, the only thing I can tell you is, like I said in the beginning of this big long diatribe, is we did try to we spent a week with Jan, and we went to several different locations. We went and talked to her cousin, um, who was supposedly chased on a motorcycle by one, and um, you know, at the end of that week, the jury was still out. I mean, I was still at a point where I couldn't say it was true or it wasn't true. And the interesting part about the whole thing is, there was a time after that where myself and Jan, we broke contact, and she was going through a lot of life stuff, and I was, living life and doing my thing. And prior to that, there were some things that were related to me that I didn't really understand by Jan, and I didn't know why she was telling me those things. And um, it took many years to figure out what it all possibly meant. And I think that it it just, at the end of the day, even though I couldn't say that, hey, the story happened or this story is true, I could say this is something that lends to the credibility of the story. Now, aside from Jan herself, I've lived in this area for 27 years. I know a lot of people,
I know you do.
and people of varying backgrounds, different, lifestyles, good people, bad people, you name it, I know them. And I have talked to a lot of people that have lived here all their life. I've talked to people that lived here during that time frame that that event supposedly happened. And the interesting thing about it is the majority of the people that know about it, when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, that really happened.
They do?
Yeah, that really happened."
Wow.
And the interesting thing about it is this: when they find out that I'm a Bigfoot dog slash dogman researcher, or I'm investigating that topic, then for whatever reason they change their story, and they're like,
Uh,
"Oh well, that really didn't happen," or whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, whatever."
I've seen people change their stories too before, and it's the oddest thing. It's the oddest thing, and I oh we could go there tonight. I guess we can go there with that.
Well,
I've seen it a lot, and as researchers ourselves, and people who our lives kind of, I'm not going to say my life does kind of revolve around this now. It used to not. Okay. I used to do this I still just do this for fun. Okay. But I never in a million years thought that my life would literally revolve around Bigfoot and Dogman at this point. Okay. Um, but, uh, but you know, it's we go out there and we do some research, we do some investigations of like some, you know, I investigated an alleged Bigfoot death, a death that was caused by a Bigfoot. And I was called out there. The guy kept was a park ranger. He kept trying to get me to go out to this park. He was like, "We've had 9 sightings in like 28 days or 30 days." And it wasn't until he said they had a death. And I was like, "All right, we'll be out there." At this point, there's a death related to a Bigfoot. I'm there. I'll be right there. Let's go see what we can do about this. Okay. And I went, and this guy had no reason to lie to me about all this. I got out there. He showed us all the places where Bigfoot had been, all the sightings and everything. And then he told it. I even sat in the room. I went inside the cabin where the old man had died. I sat on the bed. Okay. Like I remember being in there and I was like, oh man. And I was looking because I wanted to get the vantage point from the bed to the window and all that, like I put myself in his situation and I was like, all right, it all panned out. We went around, we looked for tracks. We looked for any kind of Bigfoot sign around the cabin. And we didn't find a whole lot. But then come to find out, one of my teammates knows the coroner in that town. And the coroner had a completely different story. And it was like, had nothing to do with the older man that had died. It was a young girl who had a drug overdose and stuff. It just, none of it made sense. I felt like I was losing my mind, honestly.
Well, I've actually encountered that myself when I was looking into an incident that happened in the LBL. And it just so happens that I worked with a guy that was related to the coroner in the county that did the autopsy on the decedent, and it was related to me that it was a drug overdose. And as soon as that information was released to me, I was like, okay, I know this is fake. I know this is a cover up.
Mark, do you think that there's like is that the go-to? Is that the go-to?
I think it could be. I think it could be.
So we got a lot of Bigfoot and Dogman researchers in the chat right now. If anybody, I'm not saying put it in the chat right now, but y'all contact me and let me know if you've ever had this happen to you. Because I think if I've had this happen, if you've had this happen as well, and something felt off about it, maybe that's like their go-to. Like it's just, they change the story and say that when it really was a cryptid related death. You heard it here first, y'all. If anybody's had this happen before, let us know. Okay, but go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine.
This is good. This is good stuff. This is why I do what I do right here.
And just to let everybody know, I'm not currently. I've got the stream open in another monitor here, but I'm not actually looking at it. So if you got questions,
I'll pull them up if I see any. Okay. I'm monitoring the chat. My eyes are all over the place.
I'm monitoring the chat.
I know, right? He's okay, y'all. Cryptidville is also a moderator over here too. So thank you for your service when it comes to that. I
I
appreciate
try,
you.
but I don't always catch
I
everything.
appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. So, but I'm trying to remember where I was at.
Talking
So
about the drug overdose.
yeah, so I think that in some instances that might be used as a possible cover up story or something of that nature. And um, I'm sifting through stories that I can and can't talk about, by the way,
Okay.
because um, and this is something that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. When before the show, I was talking about not a lot of people have me on their show or even
I know you
asked me
got
to be on their show.
you're
And
you're a loose cannon, Mark. I'm just kidding.
well,
You're a loose
I don't,
cannon.
I don't,
Controversy.
I
I
don't
tell you
operate in
what.
the, I don't operate in the same realm that some people do. You know,
That's why I like you.
I don't,
That's
I
why I
don't,
like bringing you on.
I don't do a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I could speculate. And I could throw out some cool theories and all that good stuff. I can do that all day long and blow people's minds and this, that, and the other. But being able to back up what you're talking about
Hmm.
has to me has more value than anything. And then being reliable with that information is is reliable and honest and responsible with information is the thing with me. I always say everybody's got a price, right?
Unfortunately,
Right.
most people do.
So
I
that
mean, if we're talking billions, I might have a price. Just kidding.
yeah, I mean it would take a
I'm just
whole
kidding.
lot more money than what
Billions?
people are
What?
were are taking to to come up with some of the stuff they are.
Yeah, it's
And and,
it's
and then
kind of
even
sad.
even
Yeah.
even then I would be like really, really hesitant because I pride myself on trying to do the right thing and be honest, you know, and that's why that's why I kind of get myself into trouble because some people aren't just they're just not wired that way, and I understand that, but and I understand that's just a difference in people, and
Well,
um,
it's it's almost it's almost like a badge of honor to go to the LBL now. It really is. I think it always kind of has been, but it's a badge of because there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stories that come out of there now, a lot. And just to backtrack just a little bit because Miss VTAC says, what year was the LBL incident? I think it was supposed to be around 1982, if I
yeah, my
recall.
my response question, and this is something I always used to get in trouble for growing up, was answering a question. After later in life, I still get in trouble for this. Is answering a question with a question. My question would be, "What incident? Which incident are you referring to?"
Which
But if you're
incident?
referring to
There's a lot of them.
the 82 massacre, supposedly is what a lot of people call it. I don't I don't really I don't really like that term myself, but um, because there's just no other than Jan's story. Even Jan's story didn't get as gory and as graphic as some people make it. When you go back and you look at it as it was originally released, you know, it was not as graphic as a lot of people make it out to be.
Now, was it Jan that did the documentary with the North American Dogman Project? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, because I had been given that target as a remote viewing target, that massacre. And after I did it, I actually contacted immediately the only person I knew outside of Bob Grumpy, that was, the head of one of my teams there, one of my research buddies, that knew about Dogman. He was part of the North American Dogman Project, and I contacted Jody Cook. And Jody, after I told him what I had done, and I was like, I got all this data, and it looks like this family really was, unalive there, and it was horrible. And we talked a little bit back and forth, and he sent me a documentary.
Yeah.
And that's what you're referring to, right? That documentary, was that Jan?
Yeah, the lady in the documentary was Jan.
Wow. She's the one that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think it was that Miss Vitek was actually saying, that she had heard that there was people that worked in a convenience store that overheard the policeman talking about what had happened.
She was supposedly that person.
She was that person. That's what I was going to ask you. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, she, and I've heard people talk about, well, the gas station's not there and blah, blah, blah. I've actually been to the location where the gas station was. It is no longer there as a physical building. It just is at this point. When I was there, the awning for over the gas pumps was still there, but there was no building. So I knew that it was a gas station at one point.
There were signs.
Yeah. But outside of that, I don't have anything else to go on as far as that goes, other than what she related.
That's very interesting. That's interesting that you can back up that there was a gas station there. I mean, that documentary that I saw that Jody sent me back then, it's been about 2 or 3 years now. It made me a believer. Okay, well, I'd already remote viewed it by that point. I remote viewed it, and when I saw that, I was crying like pretty much the whole documentary, because I was like, well, I'd already seen a lot of what had happened there for remote viewing the family, but it was more than that. It's not just that family. They actually document the fish and game fella who had the deathbed confession, who said that he had watched a couple get mauled to death by a dog man while he was in his boat, and it was so shocking that he passed out and he woke up. He was down the river or down the creek, and he woke up and he couldn't believe what he had seen. So,
me personally, I kind of have a tough time with the whole deathbed confession thing, for the simple fact that, none of us are getting any younger, and sooner or later you get to the point where you just say, to heck with it, I'm going to tell what happened or whatever. And, it's unfortunate that the fella that was relating that incident, that he supposedly passed away a short time after that from the cancer that he had. And that was supposedly the whole reasoning for his confession about what had happened. And, I seem to recall hearing about that story before that documentary ever came out. And I can't validate that, that it's 100% true, but I did hear about that story.
yeah.
So it was an interesting aspect of the whole phenomenon.
Well, it's not just that too. There's also the hunters that have gone missing and have been found deceased and things like that too. And there's a few stories out of there. And also I've heard stories, we don't have to get into it, but I've heard stories like Bigfoot and Dogman working together out there, like stuff that I think I've only heard about that at the LBL, actually. I don't know. There are Bigfoots out there too, right?
Yeah. So, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are Bigfoot in the LBL. And but and I've stated this in my last interview. The two dogmen that I saw, they weren't actually inside of the LBL. They were in locations that were on the edge of the lake, which is at that location that I was at. The lake is probably under a mile wide at that point. So,
Oh wow.
and it was not that far from it. So, um, and we've had, um, if you look at other organizations and websites, there are other accounts that have come out of this area. Um, so it does make it kind of interesting.
It does.
That
I heard. Oh, I don't mean to interrupt. Can I ask you a question
Go
real
ahead.
quick? Okay.
Sure.
Is it true that there are Bigfoots in the north and Dogmen in the south, or something? There's like geographical differences, right? Like in one areas where the Bigfoots are, and the other areas where the Dogmen are known to be. Is that true, or do they kind of commingle?
Okay. So I'm going to do this. This is where I start the fire
Oh gosh.
and set the
Oh
bridge on
no.
fire.
Did I just ask a hot question there?
So, without
I'm curious. I'm very because I hear this all the time on other people's shows and stuff. Where I have. I mean, I don't have time to watch a lot of other shows. Okay, but I just remember hearing that in the past. Let's just say.
so so there is a I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. So there are people who frequent the LBL who may have released information that may or may not be totally accurate. And I tell everybody, this is the realm that I operate in. I tell people and have told people for years, don't believe what I have to say. If you want to know the truth, the best way to find out the truth is to find out for yourself by going to that place. And I understand some people are not either in a position to do that, have no desire to do that, or too scared to do that, and or may have other circumstances that might keep them from doing that. And I understand that. But this goes back to the thing that you were talking about in the show the other night or the other day. You have to be careful about where you get your information from because not everybody is doing real research and is not putting out information because it's something that they feel is important that you should know as a kind of like a PSA or whatever. So you have to be very careful about the information that you get because even around some of the incidents that come out of there or that have come out of that area, you know, without getting into great detail. And this is once again, this is probably why people don't want to acknowledge the truth. But at the end of the day, you can't. The truth is not going anywhere. It's still there, no matter how much you try to hide it. And I get it, and trust me, I'm not here to try to crush people. I'm not here to try to go against anybody's credibility or anything like that. But you brought it on yourself because you didn't tell the truth at the end of the day.
Uh-oh.
And
Ooh, this is getting
and
juicy. This is getting juicy.
and I'm not bound by the same things that you're bound to. And if that causes you not to want to talk to me about the LBL or you don't want me on your podcast, I'm fine with that. But if you had told the truth in the beginning, you wouldn't have to hide behind lies. And there's no other way to put that. And at the end of the day, to answer your question, that whole thing of Dogman in the north, Bigfoot in the south, you might as well throw that out the window with the dishwater
Okay.
because that's not true.
I'd always heard that. Okay.
That's
Well,
that's just not true.
I thought maybe it was a territorial thing, and it was like, gotta
And
be careful.
and another thing now, and I have witnessed this myself. There is an area that I researched in where there was a dog man that lived in that area. There were also Bigfoot that were in that area. Never did I see them together. Never did they get into the same. It's like if the dog man came to an area, the Bigfoot would leave. If the Bigfoot moved into an area, the dog man would move, and they never were in the same area at the same time. And there was definitely no indication that they ever worked together. And you know, I'm I'm not going to say that they don't or can't or wouldn't, but I think that at the end of the day, I think that it would fall upon uh, the whole origin question as to whether or not they would work together. And by origin question, I'm referring to, are they a werewolf or a dog man? And in saying that, I think that if there was some intercommunication or working together that was taking place, it is possible. And this, once again, this is my opinion. I don't think that Bigfoot would work with a werewolf, but they may work with a dog man. And I say that because of the origin and nature of it. A dog man has always been a dog man. He's never going to change. He's not human. He is what he is. But a werewolf was a human at one time until they decided to, utilize the forces that they're using to convert themselves into a werewolf. And I don't think that the nature of that coincides with the nature of Bigfoot. That would, to me, logically looking at it, I don't think that they would jive together too well. And that's
Okay.
my opinion.
That makes total sense to me. Um, Jerry has an interesting point here. He's talking about military weaponized weaker versions of dogmen that real dogmen love tearing apart. Okay, well, I brought this comment up because I was thinking about the military involvement or the weaponization. Let's just say the weaponization of dogmen or cryptids in general. Okay, I through all of my research and my remote viewing targets that I've had, I believe that in most of these national parks, I'm going to say a lot of these national parks, I believe there could be some kind of underground facility there, or there's some kind of connection. I mean, there are federal lands, right? State and federal lands, and I do believe that there's some kind of connection there with the cryptids and the government or our military potentially. What do you think about that? Do you think there's some kind of presence there in the LBL? Is that a loaded question?
Very loaded.
You don't have to answer that. I mean, I think there is personally.
Well,
Um,
I'm gonna answer it like this. So, um, you know, I think at one time there was some talk. I forget what the actual numbers were, but I think that somebody said there were like 2,000 plus different underground facilities that were run by militaries and governments around the world or in the U.S. I think it was in the U.S. So knowing that, uh, if that is true, it would stand to reason to me that it's possible that there could be something over there.
Yeah, I think there could be. I don't know. Um, it's just mighty suspicious, that you know, I've done shows on like the potential there being like a dogman breeding program and all that. People I've heard that people go out into the LBL and they hear what sounds like a garbage can being dropped from the sky and like landing on the ground and like hearing these loud metallic noises, like scraping sounds and stuff. Have you ever experienced that out there?
Like I mentioned in the beginning, I've lived in this area for 27 years roughly. I've been over there by myself a lot. I don't generally tend to advertise when I go over there, and you know, even though I am careful about where I go and what I do, because you have a lot of different factors that you have to consider. Just being over there, you got wildlife, you got cryptids running around, you got crazy people, and all those different things to keep in the back of your mind. And in the time that I've been over there, and therefore several years, I was spending a lot of time over there. And in that time, I have never, ever heard anything like that.
Okay, well that's interesting, and it's just an interesting thought. Um,
It would be
okay,
interesting if I had or
it would
did.
be. It would be.
And I'm,
I hear
since
that a lot.
that stuff has come out, I
Okay.
do keep it in the back of my mind when I'm out and about, to keep that as a something to be on the lookout for. Now,
Yeah.
I do know that there is a location over there where some Bigfoots that live in that area, in that particular area, they tend to dumpster dive a lot, and it makes sense to me that they would make noise at some point going in and out, or accessing those dumpsters.
Hmm.
So who knows? I mean, I'm not going to say it's not possible, but for all of the sounds that you hear, you know, and this is the realm once again that I operate in. Unless you're hearing that sound and you're seeing what's making that sound, you can't. No matter how much you hate it,
Yeah.
you can't say that it's this or that. Now, if I'm over there and I'm walking through the woods and all of a sudden I see a metal door open up out of the ground and out comes a dogman or Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden that door starts closing, and when it closes it makes a big metal sound, clanking sound. If I see that and experience that, then I can say, hey, this is what it is, you know. And at the end of the day, if you're out in the woods and you just hear a sound like that, you can all you can do at with that information is say, hey, this is what it sounded like. And the rest of it after that is speculation.
Exactly. And it's just like you were mentioning, like if you take people out in the woods and I'm just gonna say they're green, like green is in like
Hey, there's nothing
not
wrong with
seasoned
being green.
researchers, let's just say.
I was
Look,
green at one point. I
I
will
feel
admit it.
green myself, okay? And I mean that by like kind of, everything's gonna be a Bigfoot. If you hear something out there, everything's a Bigfoot, right? Or if you're going out looking for UFOs, you look in the sky and something moves, it's a UFO, okay? And so you got to use your discernment to that for that. And so yeah, you can't label everything, and I totally get that. 100% get that. And also, KAS, I wanted to address this real quick. So there are no good werewolves. That's not true. I think there are some people that are probably good werewolves, and I have people who are probably watching the show right now who are werewolves. And I've been in contact with some of these people. Okay, so I don't think they're all bad. I mean, some it depends on who you're talking to. Okay, there are people who I've even had on my show that think that werewolves are demonic and stuff. I mean, well, people are demonic. Some
Yeah,
people.
yeah. I
I've
mean,
met some demons in my lifetime. I've
well, I mean,
actually met a few.
at the
So
end of the day, if you support the good versus evil, God versus devil, you know, perspective of life, then you at the end of the day, if you're not living your life within the confines of the the positive path, I'm just going to put it like that, the positive path, then you are living your life in the negative path.
Yes. It's all
And where it
relative,
gets
y'all.
interesting, yeah,
It's
and
all
where it gets
relative.
interesting,
That's what he's
where
saying.
where it gets really interesting is, if you look at, like, and one of the sections of, well, and I've been thinking about this uh, as a book topic, you know, uh, not that I would ever sell it, but I would definitely write it. But you know, I was thinking about the whole term, the tale of Bigfoot, right? So,
The
if
tail of
you
Bigfoot.
Tao, Tao, or the
Oh,
Tao,
the Tao. Yes,
the
Tao.
Tao.
I thought you said the tail. I was like, do Bigfoots have tails? Just kidding.
No, the Tao of Bigfoot.
Gotcha.
So, if
Gotcha.
if you look at things from the Taoist perspective, you have to have an equal amount of good and an equal amount of evil, and they operate in a yin yang fashion to
I
keep
was about,
balance.
yeah, I was about to say the yin and the yang. Yeah,
And
you gotta know the dark to be able to appreciate the light too, right?
and yeah, and the you know the interesting thing about that is, there are things within some of the Asian countries, as some of us may or may not know, that are acceptable because of the way the Taoist perspective operates within that culture. So there's things that are acceptable that may not be acceptable in our culture, like uh, shape shifting, and you know just different concepts that deal with some of the things that we encounter. And it doesn't make them good, bad, or otherwise. It just makes them what they are. um, from you know in from their perspective, they're just operating within the realm that they understand. And I would venture to say that it's not um, understood and accepted very well with a lot of Western people.
Oh yeah, I agree with that statement. Actually, something that I was going to ask you is I saw this in the chat earlier tonight, and I think it was
Sure.
Don. Maybe it was Don Moore. I'm not sure, but Don was asking, talking about the gates being closed over there. He apparently has come to the LBL quite a bit. He may live up there. I don't know. I think he went to bed already. I saw that comment too. I know it gets kind of late over here, right? Especially if you live over on the East Coast. But I think it was him. He was asking about the gates being closed out at the LBL, and that's something that I encounter a lot when we're out in the field. The areas of high concentrations of cryptids, a lot of time the gates will be closed and locked, and we can't get there. And I'm always suspicious that it's for whatever reason it has to do with the cryptids. But of course, I went to one of my spots today, and there had been a massive control burn, and then I knew why. Like last week, the gates were all closed. It was because they were burning everything. Okay, but what do you think about that? Do you ever get suspicious of, like, if there's a gate closed out there, is it for the public safety because of the
Here's the
dogman? What do you think?
here's the interesting thing about the whole gate perspective,
Okay.
and a lot of people may not realize this, but if you go over to the Land Between the Lakes, you ask anybody that works at any of the facilities over there, they will tell you, and I've had them tell me this because I've asked this question, you know, because I've run into that where there's been an area that I wanted to go into that had a gate across the road, and I wanted to know how to navigate that whole scenario. So I asked the question, And they will tell you that for whatever reason they may have a road closed, and it could be the road was flooded, or there's a tree across the road, or and there's nowhere for you to turn around. So in an effort to keep you from turning around in the middle of the road and making a big mess in the middle of the road, they'll just gate it off or whatever. But they will tell you that you can go anywhere you want to go in the LBL on foot, but your vehicle traffic is restricted in some cases because of things like that. So, and I'm not going to say that I haven't come upon a gated road or something like that that has not caught my attention. I'm not going to say that because there was a location that I went to several years back, and as far as I knew, there were no structures on the end of that point. But when I came in there, they had the road gated off, and they had a sign up on the gate that said that it was gated off because of asbestos contamination in the structure.
Asbestos.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, as far as I knew, I didn't I didn't know that there were any structures on that point. But it turned out later on that there was a structure. There was an old house, and that old house had, some of the materials that was constructed with was asbestos. And they actually removed that house off of that point. And when they did, it tore up. When they brought it through that gate and they brought it out that road, because it was a narrow road, I think they had to cut down a couple trees, and that house tore down some signs.
That sounds like a big old mess.
Yeah.
Could they not just I mean, they wanted to save the house and like just move it somewhere? Was it historical or was it just like should have just destroyed it and then taken the wood out of there, right?
Well,
That's
the
weird.
the whole thing with asbestos, and you may not know this, is
I
if
don't
you
know
go
anything about asbestos actually.
if you go into that structure and you start, it is a big deal to get that, you know, secured to where it doesn't contaminate the area that it's in. If you go in and just start demolishing it, that that demolition will cause it to spread, and then you'll have to, shut down the area for real. So, there's different things like that, that have caught my attention. And then,
Yeah.
the big one is trees across roads and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to say that there's not areas that have been shut down because of strange things, but not everything is because there's a cryptid in that part of the woods.
That's right. Well, like I said, I was like, why is the gate shut down? Why are they all locked last week? And then I found out it was because they were burning. Okay, they do control burns.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times it is maintenance, and we got what is it like the park rangers and the Army Corps of Engineers and everybody out there. They're out there to preserve that land. Okay, so that's right, right up right up the alley as to what you were saying, Mark. Okay, they're just out there to preserve the area. As a matter of fact, sometimes, oh, Mark Green's, speaking of green, we're just talking about green. Mark Green, hey Mark, is in the chat. He said some gates closed because of illegal dumping. Kids
Yeah.
tearing up roads with big 4x4s, plus stop harassing animals during non-hunting season. That's all very true and very good points there.
Yeah,
And
we actually, in the county that I live in, which is actually part of the LBL, our county goes into the LBL. Um, we actually have had an issue with people doing illegal dumping, and you know how it is. People think, oh well, it's a uninhabited area, and nobody's gonna catch me or what have you. But I'm sure that there are people that have gone in there and dumped stuff. I mean, it's evident from the stuff that's been left over there. So that
Yeah,
is a very
people are
valid
litter bugs.
point that Mark makes there.
Yeah, litter bugs. Man, I hate that. Yeah, my buddy Terry Wendell used to tell me that he would take a garbage bag out to, and I know like illegal dumping is more like mattresses and couches and tires and stuff. It's not just a candy wrapper.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about like massive, like office equipment and mostly tires, right? And stuff like that, like cars. I don't know, just dumping stuff. Probably not cars because those have serial numbers on them. Okay, but nonetheless, it's just humans are messy. They are messy. So I totally get that. But speaking of other stuff that we got out at the LBL, we have cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
And I say we as though like I live there or something. I don't live there. You do. You do.
264 of them.
200. Well, that's what. Okay, William Nighthawk, who's in the chat. Thank you for being here, William. Says that there's over 200 graveyards there. And if I've learned anything from all this research that I do, boots on the ground and otherwise, all the other stuff, it's cryptids are often seen around cemeteries. Okay, cemeteries. Well, what do you know about the cemeteries? And do you think there's the relation to the cryptids at the LBL?
That's a good question, and I've thought about that, numerous times through the years, and I've tried to find possible explanations for it because, and I'll just tell you, there's a place that I know of that is in an area where there is a Bigfoot that hangs out. That is and what he'll do, he will get in a high point across the road from this small family cemetery, and he will just sit up there, and he hangs out in that area. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me, other than, and this is where I show the level that I think at. So we all know that to understand the mysteries of the universe, we have to think in frequency, vibration, and
Energy.
energy. So, and this is an interesting thing that I have thought of as a possible explanation for why these things may hang out in cemeteries, and that is, you know, um, back in the old days, um, the the process of embalming may or may not have been as prevalent as it is now. And when a person passes away, naturally there is going to be some level of residual energy that resides with that person's remains. So, in saying that, and this is my opinion, once again, I think that these things, whatever they may be, I think they can see things that we can't. And they may be able to see that residual energy. And that could be why they hang around cemeteries. And that's one of my ideas as far as why they may do that.
It's almost like loosh a little bit, even though it's not. I don't. You can't call that loosh because it's not living anymore. But it is kind of the life force energy. If you said there's some residual energy off the bodies out there, I mean, I think I got into this conversation. We were talking about the Ohio grave digging dogmen
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I'm not sure if it was William Nighthawk that talked about that with me, or maybe Eric, who's in the chat, Edie Testerman, maybe. I can't remember who I was talking to about this. But they both have a podcast on Nighthawk High Strangeness and the Bizarre and the Unknown. If you guys want to go check them out, I think they're going to have a podcast in the morning together, those two guys, over at Nighthawk High Strangeness. But but William has talked about the residual um, energy, I think, above the graveyards, and it probably does attract them. I would think, but also like the spirits and the ghosts, right? I mean, if there's some lingering around over there, and another thing that Williams, uh, talked about a good bit are the curses that have been placed on the lands out there. Now that there was probably a pretty heavy Native American presence there. That was probably land that was occupied by many natives, right?
Hmm.
And I would assume
Used to be Shawnee land.
Shawnee.
Hmm.
Interesting. Well, that may be why there's some cryptid activity as well. Maybe the land has been cursed or blessed or cursed. Depends on how you look at it.
Well, in this particular area, and a lot of people don't know this, but when the land deal took place between the white settlers and the Shawnee were deceived and led to believe that they were getting something of great value in return for their land. And the way that I understand it, they um, were basically informed how bad they were messed over in that deal, and they were not happy about it. And as a result, uh, the story is that uh, the medicine men of the tribe put uh, curses is probably the best way to describe it on the land. And you know what that entails, I'm not fully aware, but it does leave a lot of room there for a lot of different things, um, and would explain some of the things that I've seen because it's not just Bigfoot and Dogman. Now, um, I'm not I'm not in the business of validating somebody else's uh, evidence or information just because there's somebody that I know or that I'm friends with. Um, Especially if I wasn't there. But I can tell you um, now there was a video that was released by Barton Nunnally that was taken at a location, and in that location there is something that is basically looks like it's peeking around a tree on one side and then it switches over to the other side.
Oh wow, that's on
Yeah,
video.
yeah, and it looks kind of like
Cool.
a to me, in my opinion, as far as what it is actually, I don't know. But to me, it looks like it could be a pale crawler slash alien or slash something of that nature. Now, before that event actually took place at dusk, we were in that location, and I myself, uh, because where we were looking at, it was down a hill, and then there was in the woods there was an old cut field that was there, and I sat there and I kept seeing something dodging from tree to tree, and I kept mentioning it to them. And I've got this thing where when I'm out in the woods, a lot of times I might not say that I'm seeing something, but when I do, usually people ignore me for whatever reason. I don't know why. I
Uh
guess that's
oh.
why. I guess that's why I sometimes don't say anything is because people tend
Yeah.
to ignore that. Um,
Yeah.
so um,
I would listen to
that
you. You're
that
pretty intuitive.
that is something that I actually saw myself before that video was shot. So, you know, I'm not I'm all I'm saying is this. I don't know what's in that video, but I was seeing something that fit that description, and I watched it several times. It was like darting, like 10, 15 yards at a time between the trees, making its way up to that location where that video was shot. So
Wow.
like I said, what it was actually, I don't know, but I know it wasn't a Dogman. It wasn't a Bigfoot. That's not what it looks like to me.
Well,
So
what had happened was I had done seen that, y'all. I could imagine the conversation after that. And they got that on video.
yeah.
That's wild. It's actually really good. I bet that felt good to get some confirmation though that you weren't crazy. You weren't that crazy, right?
Well, I don't really tend to operate in that confirmation. I don't require a lot of confirmation,
I know.
you
I'm
know,
the same. I feel you. I feel
because
you.
usually
It is what
if
it
I see
is.
or hear something, usually I know that I'm not seeing things. And then if I have a question about it, usually I'll sit back and say, you know, let's reproduce it, or can I see it again? I don't automatically jump up and say this is what it was or what have you. And I think that's where a lot of people fail in the whole research aspect, is because they may see something and it may just be a shadow of a tree from the sun shifting in the sky move a little bit, and they may catch it out of their periphery, and they may see that, and it may startle them, and they may think that there's something there. But and I'll tell you this, one of my sightings that I had, there was a friend of mine that was working on a at the time there was a friend of mine that was working on a piece of property. He was digging a pond for a gentleman, and he had a track hoe, and he was in there and he was scooping out that dirt and doing his thing. And I don't know if you ever been around a track hoe or not, but those things are pretty loud.
Oh yeah.
You
All
can
all
you
big
can
heavy
actually
equipment's loud.
yeah, you can actually hear that you could hear that particular track hoe about 2 miles away when it was running.
That's loud.
Yeah. So I had stopped by, and it was me, the property owner, and the owner of the construction company that was doing the work, and my friend doing that was actually running the equipment was down there, which I was friends with all of them. And I stopped by, and we're standing up there, we're watching him work, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement across the road in the tree line, and I looked, and I was like, "Oh, that was just the sun hitting the side of a tree," and that's what it looked like at first. And I was standing there, and we're talking, and he's working, and we're just shooting the breeze. And about 5 minutes goes by, and I catch movement again, and I'm like, okay. So I stand there, and I'm like forcing myself to look at that spot, and because I want to see what this is. Because when I'm looking at it, it looks just like the sun and the shadows hitting the side of this great big oak tree. And I'm standing there watching it, and I'm staring at it, and I'm like, go ahead, make some kind of deceptive movement or whatever so I can see what this is. And I'm standing there, and I'm not, you can believe me if you want to, you can't. You can not believe me, I don't care. But there was the biggest Chewbacca looking. Now, this thing had a lot of gray hair on it, and the coloration of it looked like an oak tree. And if it hadn't ever moved, I never would have seen it.
Whoa.
And it took a step back. And when it took a step back, there was a tree behind it. And when it took that step back, I saw its full silhouette. And this thing was huge. And it looked straight up Chewbacca, but different. Chewbacca's kind of got light brown hair mixed with dark brown hair. This thing had a lot of gray in it. And when it took that step back, it's like it stepped back and it just disappeared. Now, I'm not saying that it physically disappeared. I'm just saying that after it stopped moving, I could not see it anymore. And that's just how good these things can blend in. If they don't move, you're not going to see them. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like just anything. Um, so that was one of the sightings that I had that was not a very eventful sighting, but interesting nonetheless.
I think it's fantastic. That's huge. So, no pun intended. I mean, that's gigantic. That's huge. I mean, and it looked like a Chewbacca type of a
Yeah,
character there. And I mean, you got to think people that do like whoever made Star Wars, okay, like all these movies with this. I mean, I think this is soft disclosure. I mean, I think that when they added Chewbacca to that lineup of characters in those movies, it was getting us prepared for all the Bigfoot stuff. And I know that by the time they made those movies, they'd already had the Patty sighting, back in 1967, right? That video.
oh yeah,
But they put things like that in movies, and it just seems so fantastical. It's like, oh yeah, well that's based off Patty. Well, I don't know. There's thousands or millions of them all over the country. Okay, all over the world. There's many of them. And Nighthawk, William Nighthawk is in the chat right now, and so is Eric. I was just talking about y'all. I know y'all are in here listening to me talking about you. Um, but he said, yeah, that he's actually Shawnee as well, Lakota and Shawnee.
mm,
And so he said that he dark medicine men. Okay, he is a medicine man. Have cursed the land. Okay, cursed it and basically summoned some of these creatures there. Okay, to protect that land, Mark. So
I can believe it
yeah,
because I've seen a myriad of things in and out of the LBL that have made my time here very interesting. Let's just say
yeah.
that.
Well, you're still walking around. You're still alive. Nothing has hurt you or taken you out, except maybe psychologically it might have messed with you a little bit. I don't know. What do you think? Like you've never been physically harmed by any of them, and that kind of goes against everything that we were taught or we hear about dogmen and some of these creatures out there. I mean, I'm still here too. I have volunteered to be bait many times. Okay, and I'm still here so far. I'm still here, but it kind of goes against the things that we hear all the sensationalism that we hear online, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm not a excuse me. I'm not above saying that there might not be circumstances that could arise where there may be a young rogue male or an older Bigfoot that's not able to hunt or fend for itself. You know, at the end of the day, whether they're interdimensional, physical, whatever, they have to eat. And if they're not able to take care of themselves, then uh, it's going to be i- operating in the realm of opportunity, and that's where bad things happen to people. And it's unfortunate, but I would say that it probably is uh, or has happened in the past.
Yes. Okay, I have a question, and then we have this comment right here. Um, who somebody was just asking if they about how tall. I think it was Leah was asking, or no, JoJo said how tall was it, and I think she's talking about the Chewbacca like creature that you saw. About how tall was it?
At the distance I was at,
Hmm.
I would say that it was at least 8 foot tall. I mean,
At least.
and it was bulky.
It had some girth to it. It was a big one. Okay. Okay. So Sovereign Cosmic Wildman made the statement, and I've talked about this with Barry Littleton quite a bit. And we talk about trees and trees being portals. And he's saying they shapeshift into trees. Now, this is getting into the woo factor, of course, and I am 100% woo. Okay, so everybody knows me. I can go either way. Okay, but I'm super woo, if need be, because that's what I've experienced in real life, y'all. That's why. And What are your thoughts on trees and the Bigfoots? Do you have any kind of opinion on that with like trees being portals, for instance, or even the shape shifting abilities of Bigfoots?
Well, I've heard that, and I'll be the first to admit I have seen orbs out in the woods. Um, and when I say orbs, I'm not talking about dust specks. I'm talking about actual, you know, illuminated lights floating through
Balls
the
of
woods,
light.
balls of light floating through the wood that was
Balls.
not ball lightning or anything like that. And, it it is an interesting concept, and you know I like to think about it from the perspective of because if you look at that, and I hate to bring this up, but you look at the movies that we come into contact with. I agree. I think some of this stuff is disclosure in a altered form. It's like you know telling telling us what's really going on without telling us, or telling us what they're going to do without actually saying, "Hey, we're going to do this." Because at the end of the day, the reality of it is, it's kind of like a unspoken spiritual rule from the dark side, if you will, that they have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it.
Yeah, they do.
So with that, I look at what is that movie that with the big tall blue people with the long ponytails?
Avatar.
Yeah, Avatar. Now, if you look at that from the perspective of what it actually talks about, up under that big tree that was in the thing, you know, when they went up under there, there was this mycelium network that was intertwined with all the plants and the roots of the trees,
Soft
and
disclosure. All of
and
this.
and then you had these light things that look kind of like butterflies that would float down, these spores.
Are those orbs? Maybe they were being projected. Yeah. Well, I need to go back and watch that movie. That was a good movie. Good movie.
So, I mean, it all points towards the same destination of what we're looking at. And um it's very interesting. But have I seen an orb fly into a I guess what I'm looking at with the whole thing is, I operate in the realm of validation. If I saw a Bigfoot turn into an orb, and that orb fly into a tree and disappear into the tree, then I could say that they're utilizing trees. And I'm sure, because I have heard, that there are people that have seen that. But in order for me myself to say that, I would have to experience it myself. And that's the realm that I operate in. Um, so I mean, as far as us and the planet that we're on, to me it makes sense that there would be some kind of uh, interoperation or communication at the minimum that takes place, because I mean, they've already proven that trees communicate with each other. You know.
Yeah. So do mushrooms. The whole
Yep.
mycelium network. It's like
Mhm.
nature's Wi Fi, right? Or some kind of network. Maybe not Wi Fi, but like
Mhm.
a grid network communications.
So to me it makes sense that there may be some validity to that. Now the inner workings of it, I don't know how that works unless well, maybe that's not the right way to put it. I have speculated as to how that works, um, but I have not been able to validate how that works, and because of that, um, you know, um, I don't feel that I would do it justice to even talk about it in any other detail than saying that it's possible, it's interesting, and from that perspective.
Oh, I totally get it. Absolutely. Now, I can say from my experience, as far as being out in the field and seeing orbs, we've seen a lot of orbs. I've seen all sorts of different types of orbs. I actually just saw that somebody had said, "Hey, Matthew Delph," and I didn't see his comments, but he was in here earlier. And Matthew's got a really good video, Mark, of the orbs that shoot down from the sky in somebody's backyard, and they turn into gray aliens and they run around, and then they turn back into orbs again and they shoot past the camera. Now I've seen some weird stuff in person though. Okay, that was a video that I saw that Matt shows at some of the conferences we speak at. Um, I've seen a lot of orbs, and there was one night where I was out in this field that I research sometimes, and there was a fellow with me, and he saw an orange orb shoot through the trees, and then around the same time he was looking that way and saw one. I saw one as well. I saw, just to me it was more like an orange flash of light, and then I heard a hoof, like real. It was like a huff and a growl at the same time. 100%, I do believe it was a Bigfoot. Okay, but there was a light. Now, did I see the Bigfoot turn? Did I see the orb turn into a Bigfoot? No, but it happened kind of simultaneously. It was really kind of odd.
Mhm.
It was really weird. It was almost like it was manifesting or something, and to make that noise. Or I mean, it could have been anything. I don't know. But we turned on our flashlights because we were making sure it wasn't a bear or something that was about to charge at us, and there was nothing there. We didn't see anything. But have I ever seen an orb turn into a Bigfoot? No, but I have seen a video of orbs turning into aliens, and aliens turning into orbs. I have seen that. And like I said, Matt's in the chat, or he was in the chat earlier. So he's got that video. So maybe one day he'll come on the show and show that video. Maybe. But
Definitely be interesting.
it would be. It would be. And William says, what you call ghost lights, we know as spirit and elementals. Yeah. There's these lights that we see out in the field and the LBL and all these national parks, and even in our backyards or in our house. I had an orb that came into my tent one night, Mark. I was up in the North Georgia mountains, and I was laying on my cot trying to go to sleep, and we were out in the field. I was with my team, and we're at the spot that's really scary. So like we kind of put our tents a little closer to each other. I don't get too far from the team out there when I set my tent up. And I was laying in my tent, and I was just watching as it was like a softball sized orb floated into my tent through the material in my tent. And it just kind of hovered over me for a little bit. And it looked like it was transparent. It looked like the typical orb you'd see in a picture. Like, when you take a picture and there's orbs in your pictures, It looked like that, but it was bigger. And it just kind of sat there and it hovered over me for a little bit. And then it floated out. And we have a video of it, actually, because we keep cameras around the camp while we're sleeping at night. And you can see the orb coming out of my tent and going in the tent beside mine. And so it was in there checking them out too after it checked me out. So what are orbs? I mean, elementals, spirits, absolutely, probably. It seemed to be intelligent. It had some intelligence to it. So
I'll tell you something kind of interesting that I didn't realize. So I did an interview, one of the few interviews that I've done with Barton Nunnally. We were at the LBL when we sat down and did that interview. And there's a gentleman that I hadn't talked to that had seen that interview, and I ran into him in person at the conference down there in Anniston, and I got to talking to him with my good friend War Criminal 7, and we were talking to this guy, and he starts talking about that interview, and he was telling me that during that interview that he could see these orbs fly down, and in there I kind of had my hands like this, like I've got them right now, and he said that this orb came down and it was like flying around my hands, and then it just kind of like trailed off, and then it was like just flying around the area, and he thought that that was very interesting, and I just I didn't I didn't ever I did I didn't ever realize that that was picked up in that video, and once again that goes to the back to the reasoning of why I don't really care for my picture to be taken or to have video shot of myself is because of an incident that actually happened. And I'll tell you guys about this incident if you want to hear it.
Please, I'd love to hear it.
So, I'll be the first to say I make no claims to being anything other than me, myself, who I am, and that's how I roll. So, during the time that I knew Jan Thompson, uh, Halloween was approaching, and she contacted me and was like, "Hey, um, the staff over at the Land Between the Lakes, they're going to be putting on these tours, and what they're going to do is they're going to take people around and they're going to tell them, supposed true scary stories of events that took place at different locations in the LBL at night, and they're going to, you know, spotlight some wildlife and this, that, and the other."
That sounds scary and fun.
It was very
Spooky.
interesting, very interesting. So, and anyways, she was like, "I'm thinking about going," and she wanted to know if I wanted to go over there and um, basically not go with her, but be on the same tour at the same night that she was going to go. So I was like, "Yeah, I could do that." And so we get over there and we go to this location, and it's an old home place. And when you pull up, it's kind of sits up on top of a hill, and uh, out in front of this old home place, the old home place is no longer there, but they have built a cabin and put a cabin up there that they have one of their uh, workers stays in that cabin. Well, out in front of this cabin, there's an old picket fence, and there's a turnaround spot, and it's growed up. We used to plant a garden there, and I think there may even be a graveyard on the other side of the fence. So we get out. Now imagine, if you will, there's like 15, 20 people on this tour. And we get out and we're all standing around there. And they're telling us this story about whatever it was that was happened there. And I'm kind of halfway paying attention to the story. And I noticed that every time I turned around to walk back in the direction of the van, that I was getting hit with somebody was taking pictures, and they kept hitting me with the flash.
That's what you thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why? At first, I didn't pay too much attention. So I'm like, okay. So I just kind of blew it off and didn't really say anything. So after about the fourth or fifth time, I realized that it was Jan that was doing that. So I walked up to her. No, I didn't ever say anything to her. So she did that about 4 or 5 times. So the tour ended. We went home, went on our way. Well, I got to thinking about it, and I was like, that was kind of weird. So I'm just going to ask her about it the next time that I talk to her. So I get to talking to her one night, and that came up, and I asked her, I said, "Hey," I said, "I noticed that when we went on that tour, you kept hitting me with that flash." And she kind of got quiet. And I said, "Was there a reason why you were doing that?" Because it just, it kind of aggravated me after about the fourth or fifth time. It's dark out there. You're trying to, maintain your night vision, and you get hit with this, camera flash. So, and she said, "Well, I wasn't going to tell you about this, but I guess I'm going to." And she said, "I'm going to send you something." So she sent me one of those pictures that she took.
Uh
And
oh. What
in
was
the
in it?
picture, it's me, full body me, and it looks like I'm being swarmed, not by one or two, but thousands of orbs that I had no idea they were there and I could not see them. But the camera was picking them up. And there were other people in the picture that there was nothing around them. It's like they were
Oh,
gravitating around me.
well, that's
So,
weird. So it wasn't like there was like just humidity and mist in the air and it was little
no,
orbs of balls of water.
no.
It was different.
It was it was it was
Very different.
it was very different, and different enough that it caused me to have a no picture, no video policy for a long
Uh
time.
oh. Uh oh. Did she catch you shape shifting? Is that what happened? I'm just kidding.
No, no,
I'm just
no,
kidding.
but it's just
Oh
it's just
man, that's
weird.
weird. That's really odd that the fact that the other people didn't have them around them, but you had them around you.
Yeah, and
And
I'm not talking about 5 or 6 or even 100, thousands. It looked like I was being swarmed by honeybees.
I have a question for you. When you go out in the field, like I like to, especially if I'm going somewhere that has like a dark energy about it, I surround myself in the white light, and I always say, prayers of protection before I go out. And do you do that kind of? Do you do anything like that, like for any kind of protection before you go out, or you
I
know,
have, I have.
yeah.
So there's a there's a uh, there's a it's pretty it's become more of a routine to do that as of late because of some of the things that have been encountered. Because I'll give you a prime example. There's a location. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but myself and my buddy War Criminal, we went to this location, and this is in the LBL. And we pulled up, and I turned my truck around, pointed my truck out because it was kind of a dead end. And we got out of the truck, and we're talking, and we're looking at this. There's an old trail that runs kind of along this creek bottom, and he's talking about how interesting it looks that there's a active trail right there in the middle of nowhere where uh, nobody appears to travel through there, on foot because it's a dead end road and all that good stuff. And it's at that time it was a fairly new road. So we we're walking around. I'm like, I walk over towards that trail, and before I get to the trail, there is this sound, and it is like everywhere. When I heard it, it was everywhere,
What kind
and,
of sound?
and it was it was kind of like it was a growl that was like, "I don't want you here. You need to go." And I turned around and I'm telling War Criminal, I'm like, hey, dude, I'm like, first thing out of his mouth was, what the heck was that? And
So
I
he
told him,
heard it too?
yeah. And I told him, I was like, well, I guarantee you it's nothing that wants to, be friendly.
Yeah. Time to probably hightail it out of there, maybe.
And I was like, I looked around, I didn't see anything. There wasn't anything moving. But as we were heading towards the truck, he could hear it coming through the woods. And he said that every time it would make like this snorting, whistling sound. And it it was more of a whistle than a snort, but it was kind of like it was like exhaling, and it was making a whistle at the end of the exhale. And we got in the truck, and because we were both unarmed at the time, we didn't want to take any chances on it being something that was uh, like a wild hog or something like that. And yeah, uh, we didn't stick around very long, and that was in the middle of the daytime too.
Oh,
So
it does sound kind of like a hog or something, but
yeah.
you never know. You never, especially up there where you guys are. If that happened at the LBL around that area, and there's knowing the history, I'd be real careful. How many hog? Do y'all have a lot of hogs out there usually?
Well, um, I forget what the numbers are, but they've been doing an eradication effort,
Okay,
and they they have eradicated a bunch. Let's just put it like that.
they have.
Hmm.
Wow. Well, I was just curious because if they have a bunch of hogs, that would be a perfect place for Bigfoots and dogmen. I would think. Lots of resources, lots of food, lots of bacon, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that sounds pretty scary. Actually, it's kind of. I've not heard any noises that sound like that. Uh, a whistling grunt or however you described it. I've not really heard that
Yeah,
out in the woods before.
I mean, I caught a little bit of it, but I was more concerned with getting out of there myself
Yeah.
because the way that sounded was not normal. That initial growl, it was it didn't. And what's weird about it, War Criminal went back that afternoon, and again in the middle of the night to that same location. Nothing,
Mm.
nothing at all.
I've seen more Criminal 7. I've seen him doing some videos. He likes to go in those cemeteries out there, doesn't he? Out
Hmm.
of the LBL. He does like ghost box sessions or takes his K2 meters or something. I think that was the last time I was checking it because I follow him on Twitter and stuff. He may have a YouTube channel, but he's definitely got a not Twitter, TikTok. My favorite
Hmm.
trusted news source.
Hmm.
I'm kidding, but yeah, I have a. He goes out in the LBL and he goes out there by himself. He'll go to like abandoned
Hmm.
cabins and stuff. Like, whoa, how many abandoned homesteads are out there? Do they got a bunch of those?
There is um, really the only ones that I know of are the ones at Empire Farm, and then there's the old home place of the last man that lived in the LBL. Really sad story. One that you don't hear a whole lot about, but and I'm not going to recount it here because of the nature of it. Very, very sad story. A lot of people think, oh, well, they just came in, the government came in and, offered to buy these people's land. And then when they wouldn't buy it, they just told them they were taking it anyways. It was not all nice, cut and dry like that. It, it was brutal in some cases.
Uh, that's horrible. And
Yeah.
I've actually kind of covered a little bit about how there's like an eminent domain type of a thing where, even where they put all these big lakes, these man-made lakes and stuff too, all over the country,
Hmm.
especially in the South, especially down here. That's really sad. People getting run off their land, and there are people that did not want. I don't blame them. They didn't. That poor family, that man didn't want to leave. Right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and we wonder why this place is cursed, right? I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot it goes deep, and there's layers to it, right, Mark?
Oh yeah. There's a whole lot going on.
Yeah. And so it's let's just say a breeding ground for cryptids out there. And I'm not saying it's part of the Dogman breeding program. I don't mean it like that. uh, yeah, it's quite sad, but the place, the land between the lakes, is absolutely beautiful from the pictures that I've
Oh
seen,
yeah.
and it's absolutely wonderful. And I don't see any reason not to go there. You know, especially during the day. I mean, would you advise people to go camping there and take their families and their kids there, knowing
Yeah.
what you know?
I mean, you the reality of the situation is this. You know, you run as much risk of running into a cryptid at your home as you do out in the LBL. I mean, that's just the reality of it. There is
Hmm.
no safe place.
Yeah, that's true. Well, so here's my next question: is that you live quite close to the LBL? Has anything ever followed you home? And I'm talking about cryptids.
I would have to say probably and yes. And I say that because of some of the things that I've experienced. You know, I've um, usually when that would happen, I would take a break from going over there, and usually that would kind of slow it down a little bit. Um, but yeah, I've had some very interesting things happen. I've had actually two sightings where I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a Bigfoot right here at the house.
Were they looking in your windows and stuff, or you just saw them
N-
outside?
no, well, the the first uh, the first time that that I saw it's actually these are two kind of well, actually the second story is kind of funny, but the second one, well, the first one was so I was working at night and I was off. I was working third shift. I was off and I didn't want because I was only off one night. I didn't want to mess up my sleep schedule, so I just stayed up. And I was like, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to clean and take the garbage out and this, that, and the other." So around 1 o'clock, I got ready to take the garbage out. So I go outside, take the, got the garbage in my hand and I lift the lid up on the can. I put the bag in the can. I put the lid back on. But when I put the lid back on, I glance across the into the backyard and there's a Bigfoot standing there. And
What?
as soon as I saw it, it kind of like stopped and was looking at me. And I kind of moved like, what in the, and I was saying to myself, what in the heck is this? And it wheeled. And when it wheeled around and it went straight into the woods. And I'm thinking to myself, that was not a person because a person wouldn't have done that. Because the last thing a person is going to do is run straight for the woods in the middle of the night with no flashlight and run into trees and what have you. Trust me, I've been out there in the woods in the middle of the night, trying to move quick, and it's not an easy task even with night vision.
Unless they're feral people, but you don't want to think about feral
Yeah,
people living in your backyard.
yeah.
I didn't mean to bring that thought into your mind. I'm so sorry.
No, well, I'm sure there's some feral folks running around here.
Oh man, I guess Bigfoot's not much better, is it?
Uh-uh.
So, oh wow. Did you have any activity after that? After you saw it run off into the woods, did you ever see glowing eyes or hear whoops or anything?
No,
No.
no, not in around that time frame. So the next time that something, it was almost identical to that. Um, it was not very late. It was like 8:45, 9 o'clock. It was dark outside. The young lady that lived next door, she was on her front porch on the phone with her boyfriend. And I came out and I've got a garbage bag in a same exact scenario. The only difference is when I put the bag in, I saw it standing there in the backyard, and it was in a slightly different location. But when it turned and went back, it made a beeline for the corner of the yard on the other side of the house. Well, naturally, I I come in and I strap up, and I've got a mag light, and I go outside because I'm thinking it's, you know, could be a person. To be sure, I want to check it out. So I'm out there and I'm at the fence and I'm shining my light in the backyard. And the gal next door, she's still on her front porch and she's like real snotty. She says, what are you looking at? And
She only knew.
I'm thinking to myself, she thinks I'm out here because of her. And I was
Oh,
like,
you're like,
I
mind
told,
your business, lady.
I told her, I said, well, I just thought I saw somebody in the backyard, and I just wanted to check it out. And then her tune changed, and she was like, "Oh, okay." And she got up and she went inside the house.
And lock the door, hopefully.
Probably
My feeling is that the Bigfoots or whoever, whatever that was, they were waiting for you to dump that garbage in the garbage can so they can come rummage through your garbage. Maybe. Do you
could
think?
be, could be. I mean, I've had some interesting things happen through the years. Like, you know, I'm a pretty routine guy. Um, unless I'm, camping or something like that. I don't go out of routine during the week when I'm working. But when I break that routine, like if I go over to the LBL to meet somebody and do some research, and if I come back late, sometimes they don't like that too much, and usually they will do something.
Oh my gosh. Cheryl Cope, thank you so much for that super sticker. I appreciate you so much. I think you might be in New Zealand. Oh my goodness. We have a very international, worldwide crowd in here tonight. We always do. We have an intergalactic crowd, and we have a cryptid crowd too, and shapeshifters. Everybody, we are so all inclusive over here, Mark. You know how we
Good
roll over
thing.
here. Yeah,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
great thing. This is amazing. And I don't know. Have you had any more problems with? And I say problems. Have you had any more incidents with Bigfoots or anything since that? I mean, it seems to be just like every time you take your garbage out, you're probably looking over your shoulder at this point. I would be. Or I take
Well,
my garbage out during the day.
well, I will tell you there was one night. Now I'm actually in my office, my home office, and um, I used to have my office set up in the living room, and I was sitting there one night and I was messing around on the computer doing whatever, and I'm sitting there and I hear I'm going to do it on this. It's kind of the closest thing I hear. I don't know if you can hear that, but
I can hear. I actually hear something similar to that when I'm leaving the woods. Sometimes it sounds like um, a, a metal on glass, and it's like ting 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 like that. And it's usually
yeah.
three. When I'm leaving the woods, it's either that or rocks clinging together, tink tink tink,
Well,
like that as I'm walking out of the woods.
this distinctly sounded like fingernails on glass, like tap tap tap. And I was sitting there and I was like, I didn't even pull the curtain. I didn't look. I was like, I'm not even fooling with you
Oh,
tonight.
was something tapping on your window?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
There was
Oh
something
no.
tapping on the window
Oh
in the
no.
middle of the night
Oh my God.
inside. Now, bear in mind that window
In your bedroom?
No, that window overlooks a fenced-in dog yard.
Oh God. Where were your dogs at? Were they inside?
Yeah, they're inside.
Okay.
So after that,
Oh,
we kind of I kind of adopted this thing where I don't let them out by themselves at night. More so since another incident that happened with my male dog. Um, yeah, I think there was possibly a female Bigfoot that was hanging around that had developed an affinity for him, and let's just say he disappeared for a little bit one night, and when he
what?
came back, he stunk to high heaven and smelled like terrible, so bad. I was
What
like,
do you think happened?
I think she was just,
Dare I ask?
I think she just picked him up and was holding
Was
him.
holding him? Oh
Hmm.
my God. Look, and as you say that, my dog starts whining. Every every time we ever talk about a dog, my dog can't hear you because I have my earbuds in. We talk about a dog
Hmm.
and she barks.
Oh,
I
she
don't
can
know.
hear you.
The audience probably has noticed this. Have you guys noticed this? I noticed
She
it.
can hear.
I gotta give her a treat.
She can hear even though you got your earbuds on. I guarantee you she can hear that.
It is weird. It is really odd how that happens.
Hmm.
Past few shows, she's done that.
Because I tell you, um,
It's weird.
my dogs, if there's a rabbit out in the yard, and we're talking about a rabbit, they can be in here and they can hear that rabbit walking across that yard.
Oh yeah, my dog can hear everything too. She's a German Shepherd. She hears everything. I had her out at in the woods today too. She went swimming. Oh
Mm.
wait, you should have seen her. She's going crazy. She was having a great time.
Hmm.
Um, but so you think the Bigfoot probably picked your dog? You have little dogs, so it probably
Now
picked up
that
your.
that particular dog was a little dog, and um, he was my male dog that I told you about here a while back. We sadly had to have him put down,
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry.
and um, he kind of if and I haven't mentioned this, but if you look at Ed Testerman when he's got his little white dog on the
Oh yeah,
shoulder,
Eric's in the chat right now. Yeah.
it's let me just put it like this: it is very hard for me to watch him on live stream, especially when he has his dog, because his little dog looks so much like my male dog did
Oh,
that it just gets to me a little bit, because I was, you know, um, I was I was bonded to that dog. Let me just put it like that. Um, and I know a lot of people may not understand that and what I mean with that, but um, I guess the only way I could describe it, if you if you if you remember the whole, and I know this is going to sound weird, but the whole um, um, a person can bond with an animal outside of just it being a pet. I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, it's like
pets are people too. Okay,
it's like
pets are people,
it's like
kind of.
I could tell him something, and he would understand what I was trying to convey to him. Above any other. Because bear in mind, I've got at the time I had two other dogs. And uh, they weren't so receptive. Let me just put it like that. But him, he was a lot more receptive to me than they are, even to today.
Oh man, dogs got their own personalities, don't they? They've
Hmm.
all got their own personalities, just like people, kind of. Oh, see, she hears us talking about her again. Two dogs. It is weird. It is really odd, but um, let's see. Yeah, Eric's in the chat. He said he hates hearing that. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
don't feel bad about
Yeah.
it. It just is something, he had a he had a freak accident, and the result of that was that we had to have him put down. Um, very sad, very. Um, I mean, I was very attached to that dog. Let me just put it like that. When he came here, I was not ready for him to come here, but he forced his way. Let's just put it like that.
Forced his way right into your heart, didn't he?
Hmm.
I know he did. Um, Mark Green actually said this is an interesting comment too. He says my bird dogs won't bark when the boogers are around. They will be up in their doghouse, but my house dogs will go crazy. Well, Mark, I would think that that's because they want to keep quiet. I'm surely they know
Hmm.
that there's some boogers out there, but probably for their own safety they don't bark. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Mark? Other Mark, you Mark.
So I would say that I think a lot of it just depends on the dog, because um, like these two female dogs that I have now, um, I have no doubt that the little one, which she's a Shih Tzu, and she's about half mean as a snake. Um, I have no doubt that she would she would bark at them. She will bark at them. But my other female, she's kind of quiet, and I don't think she would bark at them. And then I think it's a by dog kind of thing, because you know I don't know. That's kind of a hard thing to answer.
Would you ever take your dogs out to the LBL to go run around knowing that there's some bigger critters out there and stuff? Have you taken your dogs with you?
I would not take them over there unless they were leashed,
Yeah, I
and I
don't blame
haven't.
you.
I haven't. I know people that have, but I personally haven't.
Yeah, yes, pets are better than some people. I agree.
Mm.
86. Yeah, they are for sure. But yeah, I would never take my dog if I was out there doing research with my team ever. Now I do take her when I go hiking and stuff. I do take her. She's my protection first of all. But she needs exercise too, just as bad as I do. And so I take her out there knowing that there's Bigfoots in the area. But I think the Bigfoots probably keep their distance. They keep their distance no matter what. But I do worry that my dog, if there was something, she knows I'm talking about her again. If there was something out there and she saw it, it made its presence known, she would probably chase it.
Yeah.
So that's the issue too, right? So yeah, we don't know what the big critters would do to our little critters.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that could possibly fall back on uh, possibly on training or something like that. Which even though I have seen dogs that have been trained uh, break their training whenever something outside of the norm happens. So
Yeah, well, we got to protect our little babies and our big babies and stuff like that. Man, well, this has been a fantastic show tonight. I mean, we're going to be pushing 3 hours, Mark, if we keep
wow.
going tonight. I could talk to you forever, and I want to. I guess we need to probably save some conversations for next time because I hope you're going to come back and hang out with me
Oh
some
yeah,
more.
yeah.
Okay,
Well, thank you for having me
please.
on.
Well, of course. Um, I mean, boy, I've learned a lot from you tonight. Actually, I've learned a lot. I can relate to a lot of the things that you've experienced and talked about tonight. And I know our chat can too. We got a lot of boots on the ground researchers out here, and people I've been in the woods with, and people that I'm going to be in the woods with in the future in the chat tonight. And And I do appreciate it. I mean, I think it's important that we get the real deal about places like the LBL from someone who's from there, and not just believe all the hype all the time about everything that goes on there, um, from people who probably never even been there. Okay,
Well,
so
it's like I say, I mean, if you're in the business of, telling stories or, using AI generated content or, just
ooh,
being a fictional writer or something like
right,
that,
I get it.
that's all fine.
It's all
Just
fine. It's not what we do, though.
I think
Not what
it's
I do.
I think it's I think it's uh, unacceptable to pass that off as factual content as some choose to do, and that makes life for the real researcher a little bit more difficult than it should be.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Well, I don't subscribe to channels that do that for the most part. I try not to. And I know what you're talking about. And it gets to be like, so it's just it makes you kind of wonder when you're out there actually doing the research, and you're interviewing people all the time, like myself, interviewing people from all over the world, all over the country about their experiences, and it doesn't always line up with so many people getting attacked and mauled to death all the time and stuff like that. And I get it. I know what you're saying. I'm just saying we're on the same page with that. So, uh, yeah. If you want the real deal, y'all go over to Cryptidville.com. Okay. You actually do. You still got your website up and running, right?
Yeah, I've still got my website up. It's a little bit short on content at the moment. There's some things that I have as far as ideas. I had to figure out some technical stuff that I wanted to do to kind of make. I do have a YouTube channel, but I'm not like I said, I'm not a podcaster, and I'm not in the in in the fictional story business. So it's been a while since I've put anything up there. But there is some content up there that is good information. Some of it, I will tell you, is is cryptic in nature. I don't come out and tell you exactly what I'm trying to say, um, but the reason why I do it that way is because I want for the listener to think and try to form their own opinion about that particular topic.
Yeah. You're not telling people how to think. How to
Yeah,
think. Did I say think? You ain't telling folks how to think. Uh, you are presenting information and letting them make their own opinions on it, and that's exactly what I like to do as well. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, but I will tell you my story, and we can make some jokes and talk about it and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not forcing anybody to believe what I believe, and I don't think that you're a bad person for not believing me. Okay. Matter of fact, don't believe me. Okay. No, I'm not.
yeah,
I'm not even saying I'm right about anything because I don't know about a lot of the stuff that I even. So I can appreciate it, Mark. I appreciate you very much. And
thank you.
yeah, so does Freya. Freya said she appreciates you as well. She also appreciates all these treats that I keep trying to feed her, so she'll keep her barks quiet. But man, yeah, this has been awesome. I actually did pull up I didn't know if you still we're still using your website and stuff. I think I pulled it up here. It's Cryptidville.com.
Yeah,
Okay. And I appreciate it. You had actually featured a couple of my videos on there. And
yeah.
I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. That made me feel good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm planning on, like I said, I'm planning on re-adding some stuff to it and making some changes to the site. So, like I said, it's kind of low on content at the moment, but hopefully I can get that switched around and get some get some stuff up there so that you know people that are interested in real research as opposed to, and when I say real research, please don't take that as me trying to take a stab at somebody,
Don't come at us, y'all. Please.
because, I mean, hearing somebody's encounter story has its own value, just the same as, a fictional story, or a folkloric story, or something like that. Because at the end of the day, all folklore, it does have, I'm not going to say that all folklore is true, but it does have a basis in truth. That's why, stories get passed down through generations, and each aspect of the whole thing has its own value. And if, you know, I mean, I get it. People like to be scared, but that's just not my cup of tea, because of listening to a scary story. I mean, once you go go out in the field and you encounter some of the things that I've encountered, it's like, oh, that's a scary story, or that's a scary movie. It's like it has zero effect on you. It's like,
You're saying it, not me. That's funny. By the way, Eric, it's tater logs. Okay. Tater logs, not tater wedges. They're tater logs. Okay. Mark, do y'all
and
have tater logs up in Kentucky? I know
mm,
y'all do. Y'all have
well,
tater logs at the
yeah,
convenience stores and stuff.
yeah, they got them up here. We also got
Okay.
chicken fingers.
Chicken fingers and tater logs. Yes. Actually, you know what's funny is like when I was living in Atlanta and I went back to my hometown, and there's a store we used to call it Polies.
Mhm.
Polies is gone now. Sorry. Polies is called something else now, but it was called Polies because the man that lived there, his name was Polies. He was a chicken farmer. And it stunk. We had to hold our breath every time we'd ride by his house because they had all these chicken houses. Sometimes the smell would go all the way down to our farm. It was down the road if the wind was blowing and if it was hot.
Mm.
Okay, and it smelled horrible. But Polly had this store, and I went into, and it got renovated at some point when I was in college or high school or something. And went there, and on the door it had a sign that said chicken fingers and tater logs, and it was spelled like that. And I'll never forget that because I was like, God, they actually spell like how I speak. And I took a picture of it. I think I might have put it on like my MySpace page or whatever the heck that was back then. I don't know.
Wow.
Chicken fingers and tater. So yeah, it's just regional dialect, y'all. That's
Oh
all.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, Kentucky's still y'all are still kind of southern, even though you're a little northern, right?
Oh yeah. It's very southern here. We got our own localisms.
Right. All right. Well, everybody knows me for chicken fingers and tater logs and Vienna sausages. All right. So yes, I said it. I said it, and I meant it.
Yeah, and then you got
Yeah.
people like people like me. I further butcher it,
What do you say?
because I
Do you say Vienna? What do you say?
I say burn the sausages, burn or burn.
That's how my dad says it. Oh my God, you're gonna make me crack up right now on here. Vieners. That's what my dad says. Vieners. Oh man, that's a funny way to end the show tonight. Y'all have your
Hmm.
Vieners. You got to put a at the end of a lot of words too. Do you
Hmm.
do you put an S on the end of Walmart? Walmarts?
No, I don't do that.
Okay. Sorry,
Um,
y'all. I had to
I'm trying to think
ask.
of what else.
Walmarts, Kmarts, all that stuff. We make it plural. Okay.
Hmm.
And y'all, I actually have, I don't know if y'all know this or not, Mark. I don't know if you know this. I have a degree in English literature, by the way. Okay.
Well,
I
that's
took a
like
lot
one
of
of
language classes and English lit and English grammar. I know correct grammar, y'all. Okay. I do. I promise. I know how to say Vienna. I do. But I choose not to. I choose to say it my way.
that's like me. I may not look like it, but I'm pretty well educated. I like to think. Um,
Yeah, right. We're pretty both pretty well educated, y'all. Okay.
But
It is what it is.
you know, being around the people that I am, you know, and having, that's one of the things that they were real big on when I was in the military was, you know, I had one of those rare jobs that even though I may have been at a certain rank, um, due to the technical level of my job, I could override people of higher rank, um, whenever it was necessary to do so because of expertise.
Yeah, I think Eric says he says Vine. I'm assuming you say Vienna too, Eric. See, that's why I guess I gotta find my people. I knew my people would come find me one day. Okay, you just had to put it out there. That's all about. If you're part of my hunt club, I got my membership on YouTube. I talk about my personal life sometimes, not like super personal, okay, but I talk about stuff like that, and I always talk about how it's important for us all to be our authentic selves and
Mhm.
stuff, and that's embracing your dialects and whatever, it's whatever makes you you. And I always kind of say, like, you put yourself out there and you be yourself, and your tribe will find you. This is a perfect example, y'all. Okay, I'll say Vienna, and everyone else who says Vienna, unite. Oh my
Even
God. It's getting late. That's why I'm just talking crazy at this point about Viennas. I don't know where.
wow,
I don't know
it
how I
is
got into this.
it is
Okay.
getting late, isn't it?
It's getting late. It's almost 1 a.m. over here where I live. Yeah. So, yeah, on that note, on the Vienna note, Vienna people unite. Okay. And yeah. So you also have a YouTube channel as well. Would you like for people to go over there and subscribe? I think you
Yeah,
plan
they
on putting
can.
some new content up and
They can.
maybe doing some videos. Yeah. Let me pull it up. I made a banner for it. So, yeah, you guys go over to Cryptidville on YouTube and definitely give him a subscribe. Okay, and you've got some great content there. As of even today, you got some great stuff you put up there, and yeah, and we just made a great video tonight too. So thank you so much for being here, Mark.
You're welcome, and
And
thank you for having me.
you're one of my favorite people. Just so you know, you really are. I always have a wonderful conversation with you. You keep it real. Okay, you keep
Man,
it real. I love people that keep it real. That's all. That's all. That's all I ever asked for. Just keep it real, right?
ain't nary other way to be.
I reckon not. I reckon not. I reckon not. I reckon, or I reckon so. Right? Oh my gosh. Well, if anybody would like to get in touch with Mark, I guess go through your website. And I mean, do you ever do investigations? Like if somebody lived around your area and had any kind of critter thing that happened? I'm not trying to like put you out there for people to contact you and stuff. I
Um,
know that's not how you roll usually, but I was just
yeah,
wondering.
I'm I'm kind of. I mean, if anybody has anything they want to share, talk with me about or whatever, they're more than welcome to reach out. I do have my email address on my website, which that's also, I know you don't have this information, but it's Cryptidville at protonmail.com. Um, can get in touch with me through that. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't per se go out and investigate if people are having um, encounters or whatever. But if you have questions, now I will say this: I have heard individuals say, "Oh, well, you got Bigfoot or Dogman coming around, you're just screwed." um, that is not the answer. Um, or the correct answer. Uh, there are ways to get rid of them, and you know, I'm 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 proof of that because I have I have gone a pretty good while now and not had any experiences, but it requires quick commitment, and it requires the desire to not have experiences, and to relinquish that avenue of approach from these things, because just the fact that you want to experience opens a door for these things to uh, to be in your presence in whatever form they want to be, and you know so but yeah, if anybody has anything for me, they're more than welcome to contact me. Not saying that I wouldn't go look into something if it was close, um but generally I don't do that, just because of the simple fact that uh it's a time and you know resource factor, I guess. I'm a pretty busy person.
Oh no, I feel you. I feel you on that too. I'm a little bit busy myself. Oops.
Mhm.
Let me get some more treats. I'm a little bit busy myself, so I don't do a lot of investigations, except for. But if you do have anything like in the southeastern region, cryptid warfare. I know I was talking to Drewski earlier today, and he and I both we like to get out there, and I'll team up with them sometimes. We'll go out if you have like a Dogman problem or something. So but anyways, well, Mark, thank you so much for being here tonight.
You're
Oh my
welcome.
God, this has been
And
fun. I have actually laughed a good bit tonight too. That was a lot of fun. And I want to thank everybody who's in the chat tonight. Oh my God, we had a huge chat, and that was going really fast. I'm sorry if I didn't pull everybody's comments up and stuff tonight, y'all. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. With when the chat's going that fast, y'all. so so thank y'all so much for being here. I want to thank everybody who gave super stickers tonight. Cheryl and Larry Sharp, thank you so much for being here. And Jojo, thank you for being here too. And so yeah, y'all, I hope everybody learned a little something tonight, because I know I did. And please be safe out there, everybody. Okay, please be safe out there. Mark, you said that you would totally be okay, taking kids and stuff out there to LBL. I tell everybody, don't not enjoy our national parks, y'all. Okay, please go
yeah,
out there. Just be aware, right, Mark? Just be
yeah,
aware of what could be out there.
you gotta be aware of your surroundings, and I mean, just because you're not in a shopping mall with your kids, that doesn't mean you don't keep an eye on them. Because I mean, there are things in the LBL that can hurt you for real. You know, I've seen one mountain lion, and I'm talking about a full grown mountain lion myself here. And anybody that tells you they're not here, I wouldn't believe them.
Oh my God, that's really scary, And I think that some of the cases that involve potential dogman maulings, let's just say, I think a good majority of them are probably big cats. That's what I think.
Could be.
Especially from remote viewing some of them. I think that I was definitely remote viewing big cats. It wasn't a dog man. So, so please be careful. Please be careful. Keep your head on a swivel, y'all. Okay. And yeah, Mark, I guess I don't know how I'm gonna bribe you to come back, but please do.
Oh, I definitely will. I just have
Okay.
to get the right combination.
Yes, the
That's
stars have to align, and they align today. Thank goodness, y'all. I know it was a privilege having you on tonight. And y'all, I wanted the audience to know I got a wonderful lineup of people coming on next week too. I've got a full schedule next week. And it includes, I think, Terry Brown's coming on next week, and Arkeem Ra will be here as well. It's going to be a great week. Okay, I promise y'all that. And so, okay, well, I guess that was a final thought right there. Got it, everybody. Please be careful. Don't be scared. Don't live in fear. And I will see you guys back here on Monday at 1 p.m. live. So y'all come back and see me. All right, everybody, have a great night. And yeah, stay adventurous, everybody. Okay. And close your curtains tonight and lock your doors. You, especially you, Mark, especially you.
Oh,
Listen for taps. Okay.
The curtains are always pulled here.
Tit, tit, tit. Oh God. That is that's probably the worst thing you could ever have happen. I think is something looking in your window at night. But nonetheless, everybody, y'all have a great night, and thank you so much for being here. And I will see you guys back here on Monday. All right, y'all have a good night.